Are you looking to buy a property in South Africa or Cape Town or anywhere in the world, in fact? Should you build or should you buy? Let's go and talk about the positives and the negatives of building or buying an existing property. And I'm going to sort of go in the lines of Cape Town more than anything else because that's where I'm from and that's what I know best. But I have built in Victoria, I have built in Jays, and I do know a little bit about building a house, and I know a little bit about buying a house because I have actually been licensed as a property practitioner in the past. So I know a lot about buying and selling properties. I know a lot about also building because I've built a few houses on my own. And I have family members at the moment that are actually building a property. Now, what do you have to look out for? Now, the one thing that you might want to know, and the most important thing, is how much does it cost to build and how much does it cost to buy an existing property? So we'll get to that in a little while. First, let's talk about all the ins and outs of building a property. And the big thing on building a property is when you go out to build a property, you need to get an architect, you need to get a geologist, you need to get someone to come and put the electricity in, you need to come and get water to the property and all those different things. And the other thing, if you're in Cape Town and you're buying a piece of land, do yourself an immense favor and make sure that the piece of land is not a swamp. We have a big problem in Cape Town where pieces of land get sold and they're actually a big river or a big dam at the end of the day, which is full of water, and that can be quite expensive when it comes to building. And normally what people do when they buy the land is they only bring the geologist in after they've paid for it, and then they find out that it's going to cost them a hell of a lot more money to actually build on that land. I actually knew someone who actually bought a piece of land in Natal, KwaZulu-Natal, and they didn't look at it, and when it went to looking at to build on it, they went down, the geologist had a look, and it was actually just one big rock. The property was one big piece of rock. You could do nothing with it. So there you are, sitting with a piece of rock that you can't do anything with. So be very careful when you're making your purchase that you're purchasing something that's got some use that you can do something with, that you can use. Another thing to look out for is service delivery in the area. Is there any service delivery in that area? Like if you're buying on the cheap and you find that this piece of property really cheap with a beautiful view and it's got everything, but it might have no service delivery in the area. So there's no stormwater drainage, there's no drainage, there's no plumbing and all those sorts of little extra things that you normally need when you're buying or selling a property. And then you end up having to put in septic tanks and all these different nasty things that you really didn't want to do in the first place. Is there Wi-Fi? Is there good electricity supply in the area? Are there a lot of problems with electricity in that particular area? Another thing you might want to do is walk around and check out the neighbors, but that you'll do if you're buying a standing property as well. Go around, speak to a few people, go to the local shop and see what kind of people are hanging around there. Get an idea from where you're moving to, because you don't want to move into the wrong area and find out that it's a whole bunch of drug dealers or something to that nasty effect. So watch out for that as well. Be very careful of that. When you're buying an existing property, very similar, what you're going to do when you buy an existing property, the advantage of that is before the property takes transfer, inspections are done. But those inspections don't think that they're going to come and they're going to go through the house with a fine-tooth comb and find every little crack and every little defect. And no, they're not going to do that. These guys are just out there to make money. So what they're going to do, they're going to come out there and all they're going to do is make sure the electricity is working, that it's to standard. They're going to make sure the plumbing is working and it's to standard. And in Cape Town, they're going to look for beetle in the roof and make sure that it's not being eaten away. Further than that, they're not going to do very much. They're not going to check very much. So don't think that they're checking your foundations and doing a geological check or anything to that effect. What you're going to find is if you move in and the foundation's cracking, well, that's tough luck. You should have checked that. But on your contract, when you're buying an existing property, if they haven't declared something that they knew about, you can actually go back and go and fight on that. But if it's something that's kind of like there's termites or something to that effect in the property, you can't hold anybody to that because that's sort of like an act of nature. That's something that can happen, and people didn't necessarily know about that. But if there's a roof leak, and you've bought the property and the roof is leaking, you might actually say, but the roof is leaking and you knew about it. But how can you prove that knew about it? You can't. But if you go up in the roof and they've left all the buckets in the ceiling where they were catching the water, then obviously they knew about it, and you can go back on them with that and say, but you knew the roof was leaking, you sold me this house and you didn't declare it. So even though it says as is on the contract, you can't sell somebody a house and not declare that there's something inherently wrong with it. You actually have to tell them that there's something inherently wrong with it. Another thing to do if you're buying an existing property is to actually go and make sure that you get the plans. Make sure that they've got the plans available for you, and then make sure that those plans match the house that you're buying. Because if they don't, the municipality or the government can come around and actually knock your house down if they want to. So make sure that you've got the correct plans for the correct house and that the plans match the home. That is quite important. Now, is it better to build or is it better to buy? And that's the question that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Which one is more effective and which one is cheaper and which one is better? Well, let me tell you right now that if you decide to build a home, it's going to cost you double, and I'll explain why. If you buy an existing home that's a certain size and it's worth 2 million rand, and you go and build that same home, you're going to pay up to 4 million rand, and here's the main reason why. Firstly, you have to buy the property, which could cost you up to 2 million rand on its own. Then you have to do the building, and that will cost you in the region of between 8 and 14,000 rand a square meter, depending on what kind of fittings you're looking at putting in the home. And then to add to the disaster as such that you know, am I going to build or whatever the case, then you still have to add gardens, you have to add driveways, you have to add walls, you have to add Wi-Fi, you have to add plumbing, you have to add electricity, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So that same house ends up costing you double if you'd bought an existing place. Why is that? Well, existing places do tend to sell at a cheaper rate for whatever reason. The other thing you've got to look out for when you're building is that you get a reputable builder that's NHRBC registered, and check the registration certificate, make sure it's a real one, and get a contract from your builder. Get a proper contract. Don't just get a oak who's going to build for you. Building people are notoriously problematic when it comes to taking money and taking from Peter to pay Paul and struggling in the industry. For some other reason, builders are notorious for struggling with money. So be very careful that you don't get ripped off if you're building. Then it's usually what I would do is choose a more reputable company that's building a large amount of properties and that give you a contract that are decent and, you know, that will work through the banks and that sort of thing as well. Rather than just getting Tom off the street and letting him try and do it for you, you're probably going to pick up a slight problem. I've seen this over and over again. It happens all the time. But my basis of it is the best thing to do if you're actually looking for a property and you don't want to pay too much, if you want to get a cheaper rate, and if you want to make it yours and you want to make it your own type of property, go and look for a property that's a bit run down, go and get it really cheap and just renovate it and fix it up. And that's a bit of fun if you want to do that. That's actually a good way to get a nice piece of property. So that's a little bit about buying and selling a house, whether you should build or whether you should buy. In my opinion, I would buy an existing property these days because it does work out cheaper normally, unless of course you're building in a very expensive area where you get the piece of land at a reasonable price, because then what you're building is obviously going to be cheaper than all the houses that are for sale in that particular area because of the value of the area. You're paying for the view or you're paying for something like that. Then obviously building might be a better prospect. But you know, then you've really got to be in a super expensive area, maybe like Clifton or whatever the case, but you're still going to pay an immense amount of money for the piece of property. With that, thanks for watching. The next video will be next week again. This was just a little bit of information regarding if I wanted to build a house or buy a house, what should I do? It's interesting. Just a little subject that intrigues me. Thanks for watching, guys. Till next time, cheers and bye.